little bit different than printing paper bills. And specifically, it's different in the sense that if the Central Bank of China is issuing digital currency, or if the Central Bank of Canada is issuing digital currency, that currency does not necessarily need to stay within the geographical boundaries of the country. And it's actually a lot easier to export it to other jurisdictions. So you get this kind of competitive nature to the instrument itself that maybe doesn't exist as much in cash, almost for logistical reasons. It's heavy, it's cumbersome, it's hard to move around, that kind of stuff. Then I think the last thing that kind of brought this sense of urgency, or one of the more important things that kind of brought this sense of urgency, is actually the unfortunate circumstances around COVID-19. And there's actually a lot of different factors that I can kind of associate with COVID-19. I guess one of the first things is the decline in use of cash. So there whether correct or not, I walk around and I see more and more merchants and stores saying, we're not accepting cash at all, which is something that, actually I would question the legality of something like that, since cash is legal tender, and in fact they do have to accept it. But just that kind of adversary approach towards managing coins and bills and things like that all of a sudden became very, very prominent. Another thing is kind of the stimulus payments and the notion that the government may want to actually put cash that's coming from the government into the hands of its citizens, and to do that in a way that's kind of as quick as possible, but also as accurate as possible. There were all these headlines about the U.S. government paying these huge amounts of money to people that were actually dead. And if you think about the U.S. government, mailing checks to citizens that don't exist. I mean, that kind of, if nothing emphasizes the friction within the financial system, I think that would be something that would definitely emphasize it, and that's something that CBDC could potentially lend a helping hand to. The other couple of things around COVID-19 are supply chains are changing, trade finance is changing, capital markets are changing, and the common element to all these things are that they need a mechanism of settlement. You need to pay for goods and services. You need to pay for the purchase of securities and equities. So CBDC as an instrument to pay for those type of things is changing. So if you change your behavior around the things that you're purchasing, it's likely that you will also change how you're purchasing those things. And then the last thing I would say is kind of liquidity around kind of cross-border payments and the dollar and some of that stuff. And a lot of the spike in the dollar value came from kind of a lack of liquidity. And CBDC has this ability to actually kind of provide liquidity in whatever currency it's issued, again, in this kind of cross-border global environment. So those are kind of some, just a couple of the things that have, yeah.
I was going to ask you, really, is this still just in the kind of proof of concept stage? But for instance, we've seen in China, they started out in just Suzhou and Shanghai a couple of months ago. Within a couple of months, they're now extending it to Beijing, the Greater Bay Area with Hong Kong. I mean, this is beyond a proof of concept now. So, I mean, with that in mind, what's holding other countries back?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The technology is almost all there. I mean, I think that it will continue to develop, but let's just say that the technology is not a blocker anymore. The technology is there. We've shown that we can do this. It's far, far beyond proof of concepts and proof of technology. I think some of the things that are left to be determined on the technology side are kind of, what does this look like at scale? And it's very hard to do something like that without actually kind of putting it into a production environment. But to answer your question more directly, I think that it really is an issue of governance and kind of political will. It's only a matter of time until the right kind of opportunity comes for a central bank to say, we are going to issue this digital currency on this ledger in order to promote this functionality, because it's not going to happen kind of in its own right. It's not going to happen because central banks are sitting around kind of twiddling their thumbs looking for something to do. So we're seeing some of these kind of popping up now. A lot of it looks like it's motivated from, like I said, either cross-border payments, offshore settlement kind of on the institutional side, or things like financial inclusion, in order to be better placed with our kind of financial infrastructure than we are today. So like I said, it's really governance and politics.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. And for me, the kind of biggest outlier is the fact that China has taken this proof of concept and run with it, and then next door in India, it's, well, the typical kind of digital currencies are still illegal almost. And really, I mean, it kind of actually leads perfectly onto my next question, in the fact that Because of that kind of invisibility that it has, just how seamless it is. It's not actually just a proof of concept, is it? It's actually currently being utilized in a way by, or even some of the kind of traditional banks. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So Corda is in production and is supporting live applications today. Whether or not the end users of those applications know it or not, to be perfectly honest. So Corda is very much not a trial type piece of software. It's a hardened piece of enterprise technology that's being run in some of the most rigorous and regulated institutions in the world. So it is a very real thing.